You're watching The New Stack Makers, a podcast for people who develop, deploy, and manage at-scale software. For more information and articles about at-scale technologies, please visit thenewstack.io. Now enjoy the show.
Since its inception, Amazon Web Services, AWS, has been the best place for customers to build and run open source software in the cloud. AWS is proud to support open source projects, foundations, and partners. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another on-the-road episode of The New Stack Makers. I'm your host, Heather Joslin, editor-in-chief of The New Stack, and we're here today in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, or Steel City, for PyCon US, which is the conference of the Python community. And today we're going to talk about Python security, and we're joined here today by Mike Fiedler, who is with the Python Software Foundation. Hi, Mike.
Hi.
And Mike, can you tell us a little bit about the Python Software Foundation, what you do there?
Yeah, the Python Software Foundation is a nonprofit that is not vendor-oriented and supports the maintenance of the Python language, as well as a lot of the parts around the Python language, and specifically what I work on is the Python Package Index, or PyPI, which is the service that many maintainers will upload open source packages to the index, and even more people will download and install those packages from the index.
And your job is to help keep those safe, right?
Yeah. My title, as joining last year, is the PyPI Safety and Security Engineer, where I focus a lot on the PyPI infrastructure and application, as well as the packages themselves inside the index. And we do that through a variety of different ways. But ultimately, the goal is how do we increase the overall safety and trust in the Python packaging ecosystem for all of the users around the world.
So let's get started. Let's talk a little bit about Python and security. I did some research before this conversation, and on your LinkedIn page, you describe yourself as a code gardener. What does that mean, and how does it apply to what you're doing?
So, code gardener. So, way back when on social media, we all started, updating silly titles for, things we're doing. One of the ones that I like, I'm the wrangler of the unusual. And code gardener came around when I was working on a lot of just open source maintenance tasks for different open source projects that I was getting involved with, where I'm not ashamed or hesitant to go and what I would say is pull the weeds. Like, do the non-sexy parts of open source contribution. It's very necessary, it's important, but a lot of people don't find that as interesting. And for me, I think there's always this aspect of gardening or weeding out things of your code in your code base, in your continuous integration pipelines, or any aspect of your kind of coding journey. There's a ton to do. So this gardening is kind of my way of expressing this attitude towards I'm willing to pull the weeds. I'm willing to get on my knees, get in the dirt, and do stuff that helps the rest of the ecosystem grow.
So you're doing some of that sort of unsung labor that open source projects need, I mean, sung, obviously, because you've got a job with the Python Software Foundation, and you're talking to our audience, and we're sitting here now talking about it. Yeah. So, if you're at this conference, you're familiar with Python, you work with Python, you help contribute to it. But if you're listening to this podcast or video, you might not know. Obviously, you're trying to learn more about Python. How safe is Python compared to other open source languages?
It's a great question that has many layers, and we could probably spend a few hours talking about it. But the gist I would throw out there is that as a language, Python is a memory-safe language. The language itself is safe. It's also, we worked alongside the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Alliance from the U.S. government, and they vetted that Python is a memory-safe language, as well as some others in the same arena. And from a safety perspective, the language is safe. However, when it comes to the ecosystem, there are lots of packages or third-party modules that people want to include. And those should be vetted by people who are installing them. Before you install and kind of deploy your software to production, you should take a moment to see, is this kosher, as it were? And from that aspect, my role is trying to help maintain and level up the security of those packages, of both the ecosystem of the package index, the PyPI itself, the safety of being able to log into that and upload, as well as the safety of you are getting what we said is on the index. So the supply chain security aspect of it, that we will deliver the right package, the right bits on a disk that you asked for every single time. And if they change, all sorts of like bells and whistles should go off at that point.
What are some of the things that you see most commonly are as security vulnerabilities, as problems, challenges with those packages?
So because PyPI itself is a free and open ecosystem, anyone can go register right now on pypi.org for a new account and upload a package, right? We have guides out there that teach people how to do this because, again, we want the community to understand. We want to lower the barrier. With that comes the challenge of actors who don't have your best interest at heart. They may try and abuse the platform and to upload something that might contain, it might look like the thing that you want, and it might contain some extra bits that you don't want. So we partner along with a lot of security researchers and the public in general, kind of if you see something, say something aspect, to build out this community of folks who are well invested in scouring all of these packages for signals that look fishy. And then they escalate those signals and report them back to us, and we verify and remove those malicious packages. That's the most common attack. There's other aspects such as account takeover, which we try to mitigate with having strong security signals like a good password, a second factor for your authentication. So that way an account takeover is less likely to happen. But that is another class of attack.
It's anytime I've seen a security study, it's just breathtaking how many organizations don't do multi-factor authentication or there's a lot of sharing of passwords, a lot of out there, a lot of...
I mean, the easiest thing to do in my mind is don't reuse your password on any service. You get a password manager and they will often auto-generate a unique password per service. So do that, right? And you should do that regardless of PyPI. You should just do that as good, healthy, like cybersecurity discipline. But the second factor is that extra thing that even if that password made it out there, you still have this extra piece of metadata that you have to provide that is less likely to become public. And that helps with a lot of any kind of credential stuffing attacks or account takeovers because they don't have the second factor. So you can't get in.
So we talked about you have basically all these eyes on these packages, the whole see something, if you see something, say something approach. Are there other ways in which you sort of mitigate these challenges or battle these challenges?
So late last year, we got some funding to perform a security audit where we had some security experts dive deep into both our code base and the deployment tools that help us deploy the code base and kind of go through with a fine-tooth comb in the time allotted with the budget and surface any findings. And I'm very happy to say we came away not clean as a whistle because there's always something to do, but no critical, severe, high findings, just a few mediums that we remediated very quickly. And that was very, very helpful for us to kind of close some doors, right? There weren't big gaping holes. There were just some extra doors that will increase the overall security posture of the platform itself. We've published all of their audit results as well as a 3-part blog series on blog.pypi.org for those who want to delve in deeper and kind of read all of the details. But that is one tactic we've taken just to orient ourselves and see where are we? We're here. Okay, now we know we're here. Now we can kind of move forward and figure out the next few steps.
Are there additional things you've been working on at the foundation since you've been doing this job for the last year, right? Or roughly?
Just about, started in August, and we're in May now, so the time works that way. One of the biggest things that I worked on as I started was bringing the enforcement of second factor authentication to all user accounts. We had enabled second factor or 2FA back in 2021 or 2022. It existed, but we didn't have a plan going forward to specifically get everybody on board. It was more of a opt-in, and then we had an encouragement period, and then we basically said, it's time. We have to do it. And because I have the full-time job and I wasn't a volunteer anymore, I could spend time dedicating to getting the word out, speaking on podcasts and blogs, and getting people understanding why this change is coming before it happened. And then when it happened, it just kind of just happened, and everybody's happier as a result. Anybody who's uploading to PyPI has put in a second factor for authentication.
What keeps you up at night with regard to Python and security?
Well, I'm the only one who is full-time on PyPI security right now. Hopefully everything goes well and nothing bad happens, but that is the bus factor, or as we have also called it, the lottery ticket factor, because that's a much more positive way of thinking about it. But the ongoing concern of how do we continue to push security into the mindset of not only the people who are creating the packages and uploading them, but to the end users, because so many people out there are going to read a blog post, a published article somewhere that says, in order to solve your problem, pip install this package name. And lots of people will just go ahead and do that, which, again, most of the time, that's fine. But we've seen an increase in threat actors who are using that kind of, I'm just helping you do the right thing, as a way to leverage people to download their malicious code. So I think that's the one that I'm just generally worried about, is like, people will still listen to random people on the internet when they appear to be helpful.
It seems like there are not a lot of incentives necessarily for developers to be security conscious, because they argue that it slows them down potentially. But
yes and no, right? Well, like we've seen the industry take on a lot more security consciousness, and the shift left, the phrase that rolls off the tongue, bring security forward in the consciousness. And there's a variety of vendors out there, as well as open source tools, that will evaluate your packages as you install them to see, are you installing anything that we know is fishy? But new stuff comes out all the time. So how do we stay kind of in lockstep? And that just comes with contribution from the community, right? There are many more of us together than there are of just me.
What role has AWS played in supporting your work?
So they've supported a huge role because they're basically funding it. So my role here is thanks to AWS. AWS also is an infrastructure sponsor for PyPI. So the infrastructure that PyPI runs on is inside AWS. So we have to have some familiarity and concepts, and like all of the packages will also live on S3 as well as another provider, just as a redundancy. But AWS is huge because it just allows that flexibility of the cloud to continue to work with what we need it to do.
When did you start working with Python?
That's a tough one, because it depends on what you call working with Python.
Or using Python.
Python. I've been using it in some fashion for probably 20 years in a variety of different capacities. One of my earlier pieces of Python work was converting Perl modules for Nagios monitoring into Python, so that way I could monitor some big IP F5 load balancers, right? That was a long time ago, and I don't have to do that anymore, but the work set a foundation of, this is an easy-ish language to read and write, because I didn't want to write any more Perl, because that was hard to read. So I could translate the behavior into Python and get that working. And then it just became this extra language in my toolbox until it became kind of in the forefront when I started working and contributing to other bigger Python projects.
What are some of the takeaways you think for people who work with Python from your what you've learned in the last year, especially, that you think you'd like people to be aware of?
For the people who are using Python, and there's so many of us out there, there's this lack of awareness that PyPI exists. Because so many guides will say pip install, the package, and most people just trust that works because through the hard work of a lot of volunteers and now some paid staff, it does. And they don't have to think about where their ingredients came from, right? So, if you're into the farm to table analogy, be interested in where your packages, where your software comes from, so that way you can be a little more involved and informed in deciding what it is you're actually putting on your systems.
Yeah, I like the farm to table analogy. So
I don't think there's organic packages yet, but
But the one takeaway: don't get sushi from the gas station. In other words,
yeah, exactly. And we're going to try and make sure that what you get from PyPI is not sushi from the gas station.
Good,
but it's hard.
One more question. I understand you have strong opinions about DevOps. Would you like to share them?
Yeah. So, I mean, you could say that I predate the DevOps movement, right? I grew up in operations and I had the title of sysadmin, and then suddenly this term DevOps came around. And Patrick Dubois is a good friend, the godfather of DevOps. We've chatted over many drinks about the perception of what is DevOps. And my opinion is it's a philosophical approach to software development. It's not a role that you hire 7 DevOps people. We wanted developers and operators to collaborate, the DevOps.
Yeah.
So it's not, let's hire another team and they're the DevOps team. No, that you still have this problem of developers and operators not working together. I feel that, we now sell DevOps as products in a variety of places. It's I don't think that's what it was about. I think we need to stress more collaboration between parties as opposed to foisting behaviors on different parties, because there is the philosophy of if you built it, you own it, you run it. Well, maybe your expertise isn't in running. Maybe you're not an expert operator. Maybe you need some help, and that's okay. So encouraging more people to say, yes, we have different expertise, but we're willing to work together.
Yeah. That's
my strong feelings around DevOps.
So platform engineering, would you see that as a move in the right direction, or would...
One might say that is a DevOps engineer with a new title.
Okay.
But at a certain scale, organizations do need to create levels of abstractions. And platform engineering in many companies is that. They are creating a platform that other folks can plug their code into and not worry about where the electricity is coming from. And that is a good platform engineering.
Yeah.
If platform engineering is solely there to debug production when it fails, then I don't think they've kind of accomplished the goal. And the titles are made up and the points don't matter. So every company is going to have a slightly different definition of what a platform engineering team does.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I appreciate you taking time to talk to us today. Thank you very much, Mike Fiedler from the Python Software Foundation. I'd like to thank AWS for sponsoring today's conversation, and I'd like to thank all of you for joining us. This has been Heather Joslin for the New Stack Makers. We'll see you next time.
If you like this video, please give us a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more videos like this, you can always subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're on all the major social media platforms. You can always find us at thenewstack.io. We hope to see you soon.